To support this podcast, go to positivesarcasm.com/donate. Any amount is appreciated. Once again, positivesarcasm.com/donate. Thank you and enjoy the program. Here, positivesarcasm.com, recorded here from the Spare Parts Studio alongside New Hampshire's beautiful seacoast. Like, subscribe, share, donate, positivesarcasm.com/donate. Any amount is appreciated. For entertainment purposes only, mind you. I'm not a financial advisor. I am not a psychological advisor. I am not an advisor of any way. Well, at least I'm not certified as one. Therefore, I must have a disclaimer that states for entertainment purposes only. But you can find me on Instagram at @positive_sarcasm. You can find me through my website. Go to the contact page of positivesarcasm.com if you want to email me there. Or if you just want to hit me up directly the old school way, at least through email, positivesarcasm@outlook.com. Am I yelling? Sorry. I got a peach Bellini in me. Apologies for last week due to some audio technical difficulties. Actually, we'll call them audio technical impossibilities. My apologies for that. I'm very, very sorry. I do like to keep a consistent movement on this show. And unfortunately, last week was one of those weeks where I wasn't paying attention due to some unplugged equipment. And yeah, this is what happens when you don't have a producer. Casualties of war. So here we are. I want to focus strictly on one topic. So there have been some rumblings. I want to talk about the movie industry in general. The movie The Odyssey. So the movie The Odyssey it's a Christopher Nolan creation that has, through time been interpreted in several different ways. Now let me pull up the Odyssey in general. I'm sorry, I should have pulled that up sooner. Let me grab that. The Odyssey. God, I love this new computer. The Odyssey. There. Should go like this. There we go. All right. After the Trojan War, Odysseus faces a dangerous voyage back to Ithaca, meeting creatures like the Cyclops, Polyphemus, Sirens, and Calypso along the way. Directed by Christopher Nolan. He wrote it. Homer was the original. It was a book. Wrote the original The Odyssey. Stars Matt Damon, Tom Holland, he played Spider-Man, one of them, and Anne Hathaway. So there you go. There's the top three. It stars Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, who's Helen of Troy. We'll get to that. Zendaya. Love Zendaya. She's in Euphoria, and she plays MJ in Spider-Man. Charlize Theron, who plays Calypso. Josh Stewart. Elliot Page, the character has not yet been announced. John Bernthal, who plays the Punisher, by the way. He was also in Wolf of Wall Street. He plays Menelaus. Logan Marshall Green, good actor, by the way. Benny Safdie. Mia Goth, who I believe is married to Shia LaBeouf, or was one of the two. She's a great actress, by the way. Samantha Morton. John Leguizamo, who is in John Wick, The Pest. I don't know if anybody of you guys have seen The Pest. He's been a little vocal lately, which I think has backlashed on him. Ryan Hurst, James Remar, Himesh Patel, who plays Eurylochus. Sorry. Is there a longer... Oh, basically, after the Trojan War, he faces a dangerous voyage back to America, meeting creatures. Okay, so that's the same thing. The tagline is Defy the Gods. All right, so there you go. It's another big epic odyssey by Christopher Nolan. Now, this is essentially a remake. The movie itself is a remake or a retelling of the story of the Odyssey, which comes from there's a 1997 miniseries called The Odyssey, follows Odysseus on his wanderings back to Ithaca following the Trojan War. And this is 22 years, which was, Odysseus was played by Armand Assante back in the day, who played Napoleon. He played John Gotti. He was in the original Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone. Armando Sante, handsome fella, by the way, intense character. But there's been a lot of, versions of the Odyssey through many, many, many years. There's been many retellings about the Troy law. But 22 years ago, what was this? Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts. So Troy, about 22 years ago, was starring Brad Pitt, Orlando Bloom, who I just watched in Kingdom of Heaven, which is an older movie, which is by Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott, in my opinion, he's very hit and very miss. So his hits, it's easy. Alien, which in my opinion, I'm more of the Aliens. So Alien was the original with Sigourney Weaver, directed by Ridley Scott. And Ridley is all about the environment. He's great at creating the environment. But sometimes, in my opinion, as Teddy Baldassar says, in my opinion, he really misses the mark on the plot and the characters. And sometimes he makes the character stupid, or he sometimes doesn't really make the plot fluid, like getting from point to point to point. And sometimes he misses a lot of things. But it's, you know what? He makes movies. He doesn't make sandwiches. He doesn't make cars. He makes movies. All right. And the movies we have taste. So, in my opinion, in my taste, I think some of his movies are phenomenal. Some of the greatest things that ever made. Like Gladiator. Gladiator is with Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's soundtrack, its characters, its movement throughout the film, so it's continuity. Ultimately, the movie its flaws are minor and very overseeable for a movie of its time, and is an all-time classic, and is incredibly emotional, and one of the greatest soundtracks selected of all time. It's up there with Last of the Mohicans, The Dark Knight. It is one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Obviously, there's other, like the Batman soundtrack, Jaws soundtrack, the Star Wars soundtrack, Lord of the Rings soundtrack. It is up there. It is up there as one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Gladiator is one of those movies where if you make that movie, it's almost like I think you should have a free ticket in Hollywood. You make that movie, it's like, oh, you're that guy. But then you go and make something like Prometheus, which Prometheus had an amazing marketing campaign, but the movie, the characters were so stupid, the plot so anticlimactic that it just didn't do it for me. It obviously made you think outside the box, but it's like I couldn't help but notice how dumb the characters were in that movie. These are supposed to be scientists, people who reach into space. They're supposed to be very intelligent. Obviously, there's some other things at play, but it took what Alien and Aliens, and even Alien 3, for all of Alien 3's faults, I still thought Alien 3 was a very good movie because it was dirty, it was dark, it was hot, there was a lot of that. There was a lot to still like about Alien 3. But when it comes to like rankings of the quality of the movie, Aliens, Alien 3, Prometheus is below all of them. Simply because it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. It felt like it was, once again, too much environment, overproduced, clunky, dumb characters, and kind of almost entirely missed the point. But I give Ridley Scott a pass because I understand, just like Christopher Nolan, who we'll get to, just like Christopher Nolan, just like Steven Spielberg, just like James Cameron, directors sometimes just miss the mark. And you know what? That's, as somebody, not me, but, well, yeah, as somebody who watches movies for directors who sometimes like to take chances, it is forgivable. Like, Prometheus was not a good movie. in my opinion. It was not a good movie at all. But you are forgiven because of the fact that you take chances. You take chances, you come up with these shoot scenes, you have a lot to deal with. You have, like, you know, movie producers and, like, obviously the production company, you know, the cast of the actors' personalities, the actors' demands. You got the financiers of the movie. You have a deadline to keep. You have all these things that you have to juggle as a first director, as the primary director, that I understand that things get away from you sometimes. And then you have the theatrical cut, and sometimes the theatrical cut is not as clean as you... Look, there's a lot of things I don't know about movies, but I am a fan of cinema at the end of the day. And this movie didn't hit. It just didn't hit for me. It just... I'm sorry. It does not hit like the way Alien or Aliens or Alien 3 did. Those movies had impact. Okay? They had impact. They had layers, they had gravity, they had emotion, they had terror. But you were also attached to the characters. Whereas Prometheus, you, with the exception of maybe one or two characters, you could give a shit less about any of them at the end of the day. So directors take chances. They and I applaud them for taking chances ultimately to my benefit. But it is 2 to 3 hours of a movie 2 to 3 hours of my time, and movies have only gotten longer, which is fine. It's fine. If I'm paying, you know, a certain amount of money to watch a movie, which we'll talk about. I'm not going to talk about whether or not I pay money to see movies. The idea of if you were paying to see, theoretically, if you were paying to see a movie, you should get like your money's worth. If you're paying $20 to see a movie in the theaters, you should get your money's worth. I have no idea what movie tickets go for nowadays. I'm sorry. I haven't been to the movie theaters in a long time. For many reasons that we're about to discuss. But I wanted to start off by saying these directors, I appreciate Christopher Nolan. Very much so. For the idea of Batman Begins. Batman Begins is where he got my attention. Christopher Nolan did. Now, directors in many ways certain directors are known for doing Christopher Nolan, in my opinion, very good at creating atmosphere and thinking outside the box. Something I don't think he's that good at, is creating fluidity in a story at times. I find him to be a little bit clunky. I find him to be a little bit more, sometimes, he's more focused on the concept than the overall production, where sometimes a movie like Dunkirk, which you could argue either way, I personally did not think it was, I'd have to rewatch it, but it didn't hit me like a movie per se, like The Dark Knight did, or like Interstellar. Interstellar to me was a risk that I think for the most part paid off because there was a lot of emotion behind it. It was a huge risk that ultimately paid off as far as motion picture quality. The cast, I think the cast was great. I thought Anne Hathaway was incredibly emotional. I like all the secondary actors. I like the secret insert of Matt Damon. I was very surprised at the choice of primary actor in Matthew McConaughey, who I just thought did a terrific job. But it was just a great movie overall. He took a risk, and I thought he, for the most part, nailed it. Something very hard to do, especially in modern cinema. Now, movies like Tenet, I thought he missed the mark completely because Tenet was, I thought, yeah, I understand. There was way too much going on. You had the forwards and backwards concept, like almost like time travel, I guess, or time manipulation or something to that effect. But ultimately, it just didn't land. It was forgettable or controversial, but ultimately, compared to all his other works, missed the mark. Like even The Dark Knight Rises, clunky. Very, very clunky. Kind of just bounced from point A to point B. The fight scenes were very choppy and not believable. You know, I'm not a critic, but I was very critical of the movie overall, and I could see it. I'm like, that doesn't work. That just doesn't work as a movie, as a part, or as a scene. But that being said, that's a lot to take. That's a lot to take in. Like you're responsible for a $200 to $250 million production budget, and all these actors doing all these things and all these scenes coming together, and then a movie editor who's responsible for making the scene editor who's responsible for making these scenes look as good as possible. It's a cluster. But now you've got this whole new factor that's come into play that I just recently I officially noticed in a movie that I saw recently called Insidious, and I believe it was called The Last Door. Now, Insidious, it was the third movie. Insidious is about Insidious is a horror movie based on a child who, when he sleeps, he dreams, and when he dreams, he travels. His soul travels. His soul likes to wander. Soul likes to wander in places where other souls who have their bodies have passed away, these lost souls like to wander around too. And they want to find an entity where they want to find a physical body that they can get into so that they can live again. But the idea of Insidious, there are souls out there they're going to do bad things. Basically, if they get into a host body, they're going to do negative things. So basically, while the sun is traveling, the sun's soul is traveling, the body is basically in a coma. So if another soul gets in there that is a bad person, like a bad soul, now it has the ability to do bad things in real life. Then there are insidious souls. Those are the insidious souls. And then there's the demon with the red face. And that's what Insidious is about, is the demon has locked up the son's soul because the son has traveled too far into this realm called the Further. And the demon has locked him up in a cage. And so he's lost. He's now not only lost, he's locked up. So now the father has to travel into the Further to go find his son and bring him back. It's a very interesting, incredible, suspenseful, and emotional, and intense horror movie that does a good job of cleaning up in the sequel to it called Chapter 2. Because that's what upset me about the first movie was the ending, but I was glad that they made a second movie about it to kind of clean up the mess of the first movie, but then it left this interesting thought process about what the second movie kind of did at the end, which led to the third movie. Now, the third movie was not great. It wasn't great, unfortunately. I was watching through the credits, though. Sometimes I watch through the credits. And I saw at the end this. I'm going to pop it up for you. Do I have a display capture? Here we go. I saw this. You can't read that. It says, New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission, Diversity and Inclusion. Filmed with a diverse cast and crew in New Jersey. Produced with the support of the government of Malta through financial... Oh, that's the bottom part. Okay. So, this is from the actual movie. This is at the credit. So, the production in New York State's Governor's Office of Motion Picture and Development, blah, 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 blah. And then, as you can see here, the credits rolling, I saw that. Diversity and Inclusion. Film with a diverse cast and crew in New Jersey. I'm like, what the hell is that? So, in the movie, the kid who was once captured goes off to college and ends up with a roommate who's, well, black. She's black. And she plays an integral role in the movie in some way, shape, or form. Now, I don't know if that was the choice that they had to make or whatever. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it was very noticeable that this was inserted into the movie. So I was like, okay, And then the Odyssey, I saw that, and I know there's been rumblings about diversity and inclusion in movies and stuff like that. Now, the motion picture, the MPAA, the Motion Picture Academy Association, supposedly, officially on its website has no rules or regulations about diversity and inclusion, even though it participates in some of these programs. But it officially has no rules or regulations about movies that get ratings, rated G, PG, PG-13, rated R, NC-17. They have no rules stated that a movie needs to have certain representations. Okay? So this does not fall, my conversation today, my thought process today, does not have anything to do with the Motion Picture Academy Association. Okay? So I'm not accusing them of anything. Okay? At all. Now, are there a lot of associations and places and things or whatever that get involved in making movies? Yes, absolutely. Of course. One of them is the Academies. The Academy, such as also known as the Oscars, the Academy Awards, they have recently been very vocal about, they adding new award parts for certain whatever, but they're officially on their page. I have it actually here. Let me see here. Where is that thingy? Is this it? No, that's not it. Here it is. The Oscars. The Academy establishes a representation and inclusion standards for Oscar eligibility. Oscar eligibility. So, for example, the Odyssey that just came out. Well, it hasn't. The trailer just came out. Okay. And people noticed two things. So, in about 20 years ago, a little more than 20 years ago, Troy came out. Troy was a movie about the Trojan War. The Trojan War was after like the whole thing with 300 and Rise of an Empire. This is all about the Persians versus the Spartans. That's past. We're now talking about the Greeks invading Troy because supposedly in mythology, Helen of Troy, I guess, she left Greece. And her husband from Greece got pissed and blah, blah, blah. And it started a fight, basically, between the Greeks and Troy. So the Greeks invaded, and then they developed a strategy because the people of Troy were so religious and spiritual that they were presented with this giant statue in Greek mythology that was basically a horse. And they thought it was a sign from the gods that the Greeks had been defeated, so they welcomed the statue inside of their walls, which were virtually impenetrable. They've never been defeated in battle because the walls of Troy were essentially completely blocked off so that no invading army could ever get past them. But apparently they invited this horse, this giant horse on wheels or something to that nature, whereas it brought in, as a sign of the gods, into the kingdom. What they didn't realize was that inside of that horse were soldiers of the Greek army. And I believe one of them was Odysseus and Achilles and whatever. And they were all hiding inside of this horse. And at night, when everybody was asleep, the soldiers inside of this horse, as depicted in the movie Troy, starring Brad Pitt, and Sean Bean, who actually, surprisingly not, Sean Bean does not die in this movie. Spoiler alert, even though it's 20 years old, Sean Bean doesn't die in this movie. I believe he plays Agamemnon. They break out of the horse while everybody's sleeping, and then they go and open the doors. They open the gates of Troy, allowing the hiding army of Greeks to basically storm the gates and basically raze all of Troy. Burn it to the ground. Kill everybody. And that's how they won. And it's called the Trojan horse. And that's where the Trojan horse idea comes from. It's from the Trojan Wars. So there's that. And Troy is a good movie. It is. It sparks a lot of emotion. There's a lot of investment in the characters who live, who die. Stars Brad Pitt, who reason he took that role is he passed on a movie and he still had one more movie deal he had to do another movie for the production company that he signed off with. So he had to do another movie. And this was the movie he was told to do. And he was cast in the role as Achilles. And he straight up did his job. He didn't just do enough not to get fired. He did his job. He did a great job. And he looked pretty good in that movie. Hector was played by Eric Bana, who you've seen in multiple movies. I believe it was in The Notebook. He also played the first Hulk. Movie Hulk, not the original one with Lou Ferrigno. But he did an excellent job. Orlando Bloom was great in that movie. A little bit of a bitch in the beginning, per se. But yeah, he was a bit of a whore. But he falls in love with Helena Troy and steals her way, and he basically causes this whole shitstorm. It's kind of his fault that his brother dies, because he found a piece of puss across the water and decided to sneak it back and cause this whole problem. But a lot of familiar faces in this movie. Peter O'Toole, of course, and Sean Bean also in it. A lot of great actors. Some who play great, good guys, bad guys, sleazy guys, but they're all in it. And it's a good movie. And this was 20 years old. And I had no complaints about the actors and actresses in this movie at all. Like, I just ultimately thought that everybody did their job to portray this giant saga. And back then, big historical, mythological movies like this were at play. You had Alexander, you had Kingdom of Heaven, you had The Patriot, Braveheart, We Were Soldiers. You had a lot of these movies, these big movies out there. That some of them were good, some of them are not. Like, I just watched Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom, and I got nothing against Orlando Bloom. I think he's probably one of the handsomest dudes in Hollywood. I don't even know if he even makes movies anymore. I think he probably just, I have no idea what he does. I just know that he's good. Handsome fella. He was good in Kingdom of Heaven. I just think Kingdom of Heaven, once again, directed by Ridley Scott, super clunky. The pace was weird, and it just didn't make any sense in the very beginning, where all of a sudden Orlando Bloom's here, and now he's here. Like, he starts being this, he's just a blacksmith, and all of a sudden he's this amazing a swordsman who's fighting Saladin, who's this, the Muslim, army, 200,000 soldiers. And the only thing stopping them from taking over Jerusalem was Orlando Bloom. I don't get it. But the cast in that movie, it fit the narrative, where Orlando Bloom was from Europe, and Saladin looked like Saladin. He looked like him. He looked like a dude from that area. Okay? So it made sense to me. Like, oh, that guy looks like that person looks like that person. Ava Green was in it too, and Ava Green kind of looked like that person that was supposed to be that person. That made sense to me. The movie, as far as the characters go, made sense. It's just the movie was too clunky. But that's on Ridley Scott, not me. So that was the part of the epics, and that came shortly after Troy. The problem with the Odyssey that I noticed, according to the Academy Motion Picture, the Odyssey, the controversy right now is around a little bit of Ellen Page, which was ultimately the spark, but ultimately around Lupita Nyong'o, who is, first of all, Lupita Nyong'o is a great actress. She is. Okay? Let's state that for the obvious. All of the stuff that she's done, she's great at it. She puts effort into all of her roles. She's great. Okay? All right, period. I mean, I have not actively sought her out in movies. I'll be honest with you. I've not actively sought her out in movies. But if she happens to be in it, she's good at what she does. She's been cast as Helen of Troy. From what I understand, all of Greek mythology, all of history, from what I understand, Helen of Troy is Greek. She's of Greek descent. She'd have, the darkest thing about her is probably her mustache and her arm hair. It shouldn't be, but Lupita Nyong'o is, well, let's put it this way. She's really, really tan. Now, there was some rumblings about Elliot Page, who is a woman who transitioned to the man she's a woman who transitioned, probably sort of. She weighs like 120 pounds, now called Elliot. Very vocal, activist about, the oil companies and all that other stuff. And ultimately, as a person, I'm not a fan of Elliot Page at all. Really, just not a person I would want to associate with or talk to, and just doesn't really appeal to me at all. It just doesn't. But this person, I've seen in, like, I've enjoyed in movies. Like, I've enjoyed, like, Inception, not so much. Like, she was just there in that movie. But she served the purpose of it when she was in that movie. But I really remember her from a movie called Super with Rainn Wilson. And I really liked that movie. That movie had it was dark, it was emotional, and I stake in the characters. And I liked her in that movie. I did, or a lot. And the ending and all that stuff was really intense. Really intense for all the characters involved. Ellen Page, who now changed her name to Elliot. Rainn Wilson's character, his love interests in the movie, and Kevin Bacon's in the movie too. So there's a lot. But I remember her from those movies. Everybody else remembers her from Juno, which I didn't see because the main character in that movie I could give two shits about. I don't remember his name. I just know he was in Superbad. But I don't like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Never saw it. Never cared to. So ultimately, I didn't see a lot. Like, I don't go out of my way to see movies with Ellen Page or Elliot Page. I just didn't. But she was in a lot of those movies that I saw that I liked. Like Inception, I loved. Like, that's a Christopher Nolan movie for the ages. That's one where, like, environment, A+, plot, A+, the layers of the movie, A+, actors, A+, everything about Inception, I just was wow. Just a wow movie. Really a wow movie. But Elliot Page is in this new movie called the Odyssey, another retelling of a retelling of a retelling of a book that was written by Homer. And it's been and the interpreter for the book apparently is by this woman of British descent who apparently is going against some of the original narratives, but we won't go into that too much. You could look that up for yourself. I believe Asmund Gold brought it up, but ultimately we're going to focus on the new criteria here, which has kind of sent some movies astray. But I first noticed this diversity and inclusion requirement, I guess you'd call it, from the movie Insidious Chapter 3. I believe it was called it was called The Red Door. So I noticed this and I'm like, what is that all about? And then I looked into it. So, like I said before, the MPAA, now I this, and then you tie it into the new, like, why would you cast Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, who is known through all mythology standards as a Greek woman of amazing beauty with golden hair, blah, 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 and of Greek descent. Obviously, Lupita Nyong'o is not Greek. I'm sorry, she's just not. She doesn't look Greek either. She doesn't look Greek. She doesn't act Greek. It's just, there's no Greek in her. Just, it doesn't seem like it. To me, from first glance, it's like, I don't know. Like, I'd look at there's so many other people you could probably be like, that's more Greek. That's more Greek. That's more Greek. Not Greek. Not Greek. Definitely not Greek. But here you go. Now, Elliot Page's role, I could see why Christopher Nolan brought Elliot Page back on. Because he's worked with her before. So he has that connection. And he thinks, okay, you can play a role here. Maybe. That's too much of a gray area. But it's ultimately the Lupito Nyong'o thing that made me want to investigate what's going on here in Hollywood. And I don't think it has really anything to do with the MPAA. I think it has everything to do with the Academy Awards. So the movie Insidious Chapter 3, The Red Door, is what triggered it for me. It's like, let me do some digging. Because everybody's up in arms about this movie trailer for the Odyssey with this diversity push, this message. Like, is it all just suggestive and circumstantial or coincidental? Or is there actually concrete evidence behind these casting decisions? And the answer is yes. It is confirmed. Because when you go to the Academy Awards, the Oscars.website, Oscars.org, they have an actual representation inclusion standards for eligibility of Oscars. So I will read this to you, and there's a bunch of other stuff that we can dive into. Today, this was 2020. Today, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced new representation and inclusion standards for Oscars eligibility in the Best Picture category as part of its Academy Aperture 2025 initiative. The standards are designed to encourage equitable representation on and off screen in order to better reflect the diversity of the movie-going audience. Academy Governors Devon Franklin and Jim Giannopoulos, sounds Greek, headed a task force to develop the standards that were created from a template inspired by the British Film Institute. First of all, fuck Great Britain right now. Fuck it. They've got so many problems. Jordan Peterson says, make your bed, clean your room, fucking set your house in order before you venture out into the world and start critiquing other people. Ultimately, this is a perfect example of that, of the Brits not doing that. But we'll move forward. We'll move on from there. British Film Institute diversity standards used for certain funding eligibility in the UK and eligibility in some categories of the British Academy of Film and Television, BAFTA Awards, but were adapted to serve the specific needs of the Academy. The Academy also consulted with the Producers Guild of America, the PGA, as it presently does for Oscars eligibility. Quote, the aperture must widen to reflect our diverse global population in both the creation of motion pictures and in the audiences who connect with them. The Academy is committed to playing a vital role in helping make this a reality, said the Academy President David Rubin and Academy CEO Don Hudson. By the way, this is not a news article. This is from Oscars.org. This is from the official Academy Awards Oscars website. Okay? Not rumor, not speculation. This is actual criteria brought forth by the Academy Awards for Best Motion Picture. You follow me? Okay? This is not conspiracy. It's right here. I'm reading it. Quote, the aperture must widen to reflect blah, 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 blah. Creation of motion pictures and the audiences who connect with them. The Academy is also committed in playing a vital role in helping make this a reality, said Academy President David Rubin, not Dave Rubin from YouTube, the conservative commentator, and Academy CEO Don Hudson. We believe, quote, these inclusion standards will be a catalyst for long-lasting essential change in our industry. Sure. Unquote. For the 94th Oscars 2022 and 95th Oscars 2023, submitting a confidential Academy Inclusion Standards form will be required for Best Picture consideration. Submitting a confidential Academy Inclusion Standards form will be required for Best Picture consideration. However, meeting inclusion thresholds will not be required for eligibility in the Best Picture category until the 96th Oscars, 2024. It's 2026, by the way. So this implementation, this is now implemented. This is required. What I'm about to read to you is required in order to win the Oscar or even be considered or nominated for the Oscars Best picture. Standard A. For the 96th Oscars in 2022, a film must meet 2 out of the 4 of the following standards to be deemed eligible. A1. Standard A. On-screen representation, themes, and narratives. To achieve Standard A, the film must meet one of the following criteria. Lead or significant supporting actors. At least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. Asian, Hispanic, Latinx. By the way, Latinx is not recognized by the Spanish or Latin-speaking community. It's Latina or Latino. There's no Latinx. Latinx was some concept built by white people. Latinx doesn't come up it's not built into the actual language, the Spanish language. Everything is either masculine or feminine. There's nothing in the middle there. It doesn't fucking exist if you speak Spanish. Black or African American, Indigenous / Native American, Alaskan Native, Middle Eastern, North African, North Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, or, quote, other underrepresented races or ethnicities. A2, general ensemble cast. At least 30% of all actors in secondary and more minor roles are from at least 2 of the following underrepresented groups. Women, racial or ethnic groups, LGBTQ+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities who are deaf or hard of hearing. A3, main storyline subject matter. The main storyline's theme or narrative of the film is centered on an underrepresented group or groups, women, racial or ethnic groups, LGBTQ+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities or who are deaf or hard of hearing. Next, Standard B, creative leadership or project team. So the off-screen representation. To achieve Standard B, the film must meet one of the criteria below. B1, creative leadership and department heads. At least 2 of the following creative leadership positions and department heads: casting director, cinematographer, composer, costume designer, director, editor, hairstylist, makeup artist, producer, production designer, set decorator, sound, voice effects supervisor, writer, are from the following underrepresented groups. Women, racial or ethnic groups, the alphabet team, LGBTQ+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities or deaf or hard of hearing. Those positions must belong to the following represented racial or ethnic group: Asian, Hispanic, Latinx, which is not a thing, Black or African American, Indigenous, Native American, Alaskan Native, Middle Eastern, North African, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, other underrepresented races or ethnicity. Sorry, been drinking Bellinis. Other key roles. This is B2, by the way. At least 6 other crew or / team and technical positions, excluding production assistants, are from an underrepresented racial, or ethnic group. These positions include, but are not limited to, first AD, gaffer, script supervisor, etc. B3, overall crew composition. At least 30% of the film's crew is from the following underrepresented groups: women, racial or ethnic group, the alphabet gang, LGBT+, people with cognitive physical disabilities who are deaf or hard of hearing. We move on. We're not done yet. I'm going to go through all of this, by the way, because I want you to understand why movies have changed, or why things look more suspicious as they are, or what's the hubbub behind the Odyssey, or why all of a sudden you're seeing this, that, and the other thing, and it seems like there's like a secret message behind these movies. Standard C, industry access and opportunities. To achieve Standard C, the film must meet both criteria below. C1, paid apprenticeship and internship opportunities. The film's distribution or financing company has paid apprenticeships or internships that are from the following underrepresented groups and satisfy the criteria below: women, racial or ethnic groups, alphabet gang, LGBT+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities who are deaf or hard of hearing, The major studios/distributors are required to have substance, ongoing, paid apprenticeships/internships inclusive of underrepresented groups, must also include racial or ethnic groups in most of the following departments: production/development, physical production, post-production, music, voice effects, acquisitions, business affairs, distribution, marketing, and publicity. The mini major or independent studio and distributors must have a minimum of 2 apprenticeships/interns from the above or underrepresented groups, at least one of the underrepresented racial or ethnic group, and at least one of the following departments: production/development, physical production, post-production, music, voice effects, acquisitions, business affairs, distribution, marketing, and publicity. C2. We're not done yet. Training and opportunities and skill development crew. The film's production, distribution, and or financing company offers training and or work opportunities for, so the production company that is financing the movie must adhere to these guidelines in order to be eligible for the Academy Awards Best Picture. Financing company offers training and work opportunities for the below the line of skill development to people for the following underrepresented groups: women, racial or ethnic groups, alphabet gang, LGBT+, people with cognitive or physical disabilities with who are deaf or hard of hearing. Standard D, audience development. To achieve Standard D, the film must meet the criteria below: representation in marketing, publicity, and distribution. The studio and or film company has multiple in-house senior executives from among the following underrepresented groups. Must include individuals from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups on their marketing, publicity, and or distribution teams. Women or ethnic group: Asian, Latinx, Black, African American, Indigenous, Native American, Alaskan Native, Middle Eastern, North African, Native American, Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, or other race or ethnicity, LGBTQ+, alphabet people, people with cognitive physical disabilities, with deaf or hard of hearing. All categories other than Best Picture will be held to their current eligibility requirements. Films in the specialty feature categories: animated feature films, documentary feature, international feature films submitted for the Best Picture and general entry consideration will be addressed separately. Academy Aperture 2025 is the next phase of the Academy's Equity and Inclusion Initiative, furthering the organization's ongoing efforts to advance inclusion in the entertainment industry and increase representation within its membership and the greater film community. About the Academy. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is a global community of more than 10,000 of the most accomplished artists, filmmakers, and executives working in film, in addition to celebrating the recognizing excellence of the blah 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 blah, which is under construction in Los Angeles. So, to basically, in order to be even considered for the Academy Awards, the Oscar goes to for Best Picture, you will not be considered. So, if Lupita Nyong'o is not Helen of Troy, if Elliot Page is not hired, so if Lupita Nyong'o is not in there, and Elliot Page are not in there, the Odyssey, which I don't know how much money was involved, it's probably $200 million at minimum. I bet you that movie cost at least $200 million to make. Forget about marketing. If those two actresses were not in that movie, they would be completely disqualified from winning Best Picture. They'd be completely disqualified from being nominated for Best Picture. And all of these other requirements too. Like on screen, you have to have representation. Off screen in the production team, the marketing team, the directing team, the production team, the voice effects team, the makeup team, everything. The film, the production company, the people who give you the fucking money to make the movie have to follow this criteria in order to be seen as virtuous, in order to be considered for the Oscar. They have to follow these guidelines. So, Christopher Nolan doesn't have a choice. None of these directors or writers or producers who want to just make a movie for the sake of making a movie, They have no choice to be funded, to actually be funded by Paramount, Universal Studios, MGM. I don't know. Pick a major production company. They don't have a choice. They have to put a black person in there, put a trans person in there, put a gay person in there. Basically, the easy go-tos. They may not be the best person for the role, but in order to fulfill all these standards that I laid out for you, they have to pick these people. The question is, does the quality of the movie or the authenticity of the movie suffer because of these standards? Now, from what I've seen, I think it does. I think it does. Because now all of a sudden you have to change the message of the movie. You have to no longer consider certain actors or actresses for certain roles. You have to do this, that, and the other thing. Your production team and your writing team now has to be, from what I've interpreted here from the official website for the Oscars, it has to consist of 30% of this type of group. So all of a sudden, the best writers, I want to get the best writers for this movie. Can't do that anymore. You have to get 30% of them to be this group. But what if all of a sudden these people that you bring on because of these mandates, what if they're not good or not as good or in conflict with the vision that you had for the movie? Movies are an art form. Comedy is an art form. Art is an art form. Music is an art form. Martial arts is an art form. It's called martial arts. Movies are an art form. It's a form, but all of a sudden, somebody else is telling you how to develop your art. If you want to get considered for certain awards and certain funding, you have to do this. And it's, like I said, it's real. It's an actual thing. If you're filming in certain states, you have to follow these standards or you get penalized. For example, California. This is courtesy of Variety Magazine, 2023. California's film tax credit aims to punish projects that don't hit diversity goals. Courtesy of Gene Medeiros. California has tried using carrots to encourage film and TV production companies to hire a diverse workforce. Now, for the first time, it's getting out of the sticks. Under a proposal from the governor's office. By the way, Gavin Newsom, at the time of this picture being posted, is the governor of California. And in my opinion, he's a terrible governor. Under a proposal from the governor's office, productions that fail to meet their diversity goals will lose 4% of their tax credit allocation. By this time, a lot of productions are moving out of California because of just the cost of doing business in California and permits and all. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's a reason that Breaking Bad was not filmed in California and was filmed in like New Mexico, Arizona area. It's because it was just too fucking expensive to film it in California. And then you hear made in Georgia. You ever seen that shit? Georgia got so much money from offering so many tax breaks and everything like that for people to come to Georgia and film their movies. It was just financially more feasible to do so. The provision is part of a 5-year extension of the state's $330 million tax credit. Productions that receive the credit will be required to submit a diversity work plan under which they must commit to hire a crew that is broadly reflective of the state's demographics. Doesn't matter of the actual ability of the person to do the job. It's got to fit the role. It's got to fit this criteria here. If they fail to make a good faith effort to meet their hiring goals or fail to submit a plan, the California Film Commission will deduct 4% from their tax incentive. On a $200 million production budget, 4% is a lot of money, by the way. California has an incentive program for film production since 2009. It was originally intended to fight runaway production, as other states were luring jobs away with their own incentives. But in the last 2 years, lawmakers have also begun to see the program as a leverage to diversify the entertainment industry, which is much whiter than the state population. Hold on, I'm going to take a sip here. This shit makes me want to drink. The state's $300 million program is set to expire in 2025. Last year, state lawmakers began to work on extending it to 2030. At the time, lawmakers planned to adopt the diversity bonus from the soundstage credit, but that legislation stalled in August. The latest version, introduced by the governor's office in February, drops the bonus. Instead, the bill language provides the 4% penalty if diversity goals are not met. The proposed penalty is much smaller than the bonus would have been, as it is implied only a small amount of the credit allocation, not the full amount of eligible production spending. The Motion Picture Association has not objected to the proposal, which remains in an early stage in the legislative process. Under the proposed language, productions are required to adopt a plan to make their workforce reflect the state's population in terms of race, ethnicity, disability status, and gender. In earlier versions of the law, disability status was not included, which led to pushback from the disability advocates. Governor Gavin Newsom has also proposed making the credit refundable, which would allow studios that don't have state tax liability to instead take a payment in cash. A report on Tuesday from the State Legislative Analyst's Office stated that the administration expects that change will cost the state about $200 million. The LAO has traditionally been skeptical of the program, citing research that indicates the return on investment is far lower than supporters claim. In the latest report, the office concluded that California's entertainment industry is probably a couple percentage points larger than it would be without the tax credit program. But it said it was not clear to extending the program would expand the overall economy. Quote, instead, the film's tax credit most likely impact appears to be increasing the motion picture industry's share of California's economy. The report concluded, given this, how the legislature assesses the governor's proposal should primarily depend on how much it prioritizes the importance of maintaining Hollywood's centrality in the motion picture industry, blah, 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 bullshit. So they're throwing money around. If you want to film in California, there's going to be a penalty of reduction in tax incentives if you film here, if you don't hire a trans person, Mexican person, this person, that person, blah, blah, blah. And then a lot of associations, a lot of these companies said, fuck it, we're just going to move to New York. We're going to do production in New York. This happened. A lot of them moved to New York because, well, we got a lot of tax breaks there. There was a lot of incentive to do that. Well, New York was starting to do the same thing. And here we go. This is from Entertainment Partners. New York takes steps to promote diversity in film, television, and commercial production. So the production companies that fled California and to New York ran into a brick wall. June 20th, 2023. New legislation in the Empire State aims to require production companies to report diversity, hiring data, helping build more equitable representation in the film's community. Effective 2023, applicants to the New York State Film Production Tax Credit Program are required to file a diversity plan outlining specific goals and strategies for hiring a diverse workforce. Nonprofit agencies, film industry leaders to implement programs that foster a new generation of diverse storytellers by leading the way in cultivating diversity and inclusion in film, television, and commercials. New York paves the way for future legislative action. So they have a tax credit aimed at supporting the state's economy, strength, blah, 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 blah. So there's so much. Recently, Governor Kathy Hochul, who's still in office, passed legislation related to the state's film's incentive programs in effort to keep up with or exceed the tax credit programs offered by other states. Blah, blah, blah. Tax credit programs have been instrumental. Okay, so it just talks about ultimately, let's see here. New York addresses the diversity. Okay. With new productions replenishing New York's workforce, more focus has been placed on how communities are being impacted. Are underserved communities benefiting from the film's industry's growth? More importantly, is the film workforce reflecting the diversity? Now, first of all, New York got its own problems with how it spends its money, how it spends taxpayers' money. So now they're going to implement this because everybody's fleeing California to New York. New York is at this point no better. In addition, quote, this is from Gretchen McGowan. In addition to age-old practice of recruiting film and school grads, liberal arts graduates, and family members who were already in the industry, you're giving an opportunity to everybody who wants to be in film. As long as someone is passionate about it, they should be given the opportunity. That's kind of that's some soft serve ice cream bullshit. So ultimately, There's so many other factors at play where ultimately, if you want to make a big budget movie, unless it's fucking Avatar, because everybody in that movie is blue, you have to follow these standards. Otherwise, now it's not just a matter of not being considered for the Academy's most prestigious prize, which is the Oscar, the best Oscar for Best Picture. But it's a matter of now everybody's vying for that role. You're not going to get funding. You're just not going to get funding from the big production companies like Paramount and MGM and Universal Studios and whomever else. You're not going to get funding. You're not going to get that $300 million budget unless the production company moves chess pieces around to make sure that some of them are black and some of them are white. Doesn't matter who's best for the role. I'm sorry, you can't hire Danny Elfman as your music composer anymore. You got to hire fucking Travis Scott. Nothing against Travis Scott. It's just like, I don't want to hire Travis Scott. I want Danny Elfman. I want Trevor Jones. I'm sorry. I want these people to. I want that. I want Junkie XL. I don't want fucking, Childish Gambino. I want Junkie XL. I don't want this person. I want that person. I'm sorry. This is to fulfill the Academy's requirements. You have to do X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, you're not going to get the money from the production company to run this film. How ridiculous is that? So this is an actual thing. And this absolutely, according to Town Hall, the new standards for diversity at the Oscars kills artistic expression. This is an opinion piece by Brad Slager. What did he say? Look, nobody outside the industry itself pretends the Oscars are about true merit and artistic excellence. The years of studio campaigning and bribing to sway the electorate to choose their movie as best picture as the best is only part of the sham. So basically saying that the Oscars is bullshit anyways. But at least in 1990, it looked better. Like it was the Julia Roberts Oscar. Now it's like the fucking pin on your shirt Oscar. Like I support Ukraine, or I stand by Israel, or I stand with Palestine, or no factory farming, or don't eat meat, or fucking who knows whatever Ruffalo is up to nowadays. In recent years, we've been about virtue signaling. We've seen a bout of virtue signaling selections and efforts made to appease a broader spectrum. None of it done in the name of art. What is amazing, these are the words of townhall.com's Danny, this guy. The Academy essentially admitting that the art is secondary to the messaging. To explain, for a film to qualify, this is in his words, in case I said it incorrectly, this is him actually versing it, because this is a seasoned writer. The Academy has set up, in the Oscars that needs to be set up to criteria and met by the production, the Academy has set up 4 categories to be analyzed, with the movie needing to meet the requirements of at least 2 of those categories. This is all done to encourage greater opportunity for underrepresented individuals. I'll break down each of the 4, and he breaks them down. You can go to townhill.com, or you can just look up Brad Slager, and you can look up Motion Pictures New Standards of Diversity. And he breaks it all down for you. So ultimately, my concern is something that is all about art and expression. It hurts that, because ultimately you're trying to insert these standards, which may have nothing to do with the plot, nothing to do with the movie. It's like a movie about Vikings. A movie about Vikings should have nobody from Kenya in it. Nobody about Kenya. And a movie about Wakanda, which is a made-up country, by the way, probably shouldn't have white people in it. Most likely, if it's in Africa, it's a country that's, near the equator, probably not a lot of white people in it. A movie about Greece, like, for example, 300 Rise of an Empire, or 300, or who the fuck else knows? Probably somebody who's Greek, or at least looks the part, a general Greek in general. Somebody with a kind of a darker, some skin, or maybe went and got a tan. And I'm not talking about John Wayne, who played a fucking Native American. He played like Geronimo. I'm not talking about that. That was back in the day when like the motion pictures were a little more limited in the cast, and we were just trying to get a big name on screen to be, Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was Mongolian. It wasn't John Wayne. But that was a different time. Now you can actually get somebody of Asian descent to play Genghis Khan. You can get somebody to play Genghis Khan now who's actually more of who's a little more Genghis-y. It doesn't have to be Eric Bana. It doesn't have to be, Leonardo DiCaprio. You can get somebody from there to be Genghis Khan. You can get like a Jet Li type, or somebody like Chow Yun-fat. I don't know. Anybody other than just some white dude. You can do that because the talent pool is out there, and it also adds authenticity to the story. It adds authenticity to the artwork. Like if you're doing a movie about Ferrari or Lamborghini, well, I'm assuming there's some people in the movie who look Italian. They either look Italian, or they look Greek, or they look Spanish, or they look something of the role. Like, for example, James Bond was a British spy agent. He was a British spy. So I'm assuming that they're going to be somebody of some kind of British descent, whether they're Irish or Welsh or Australian. Somebody in that neck of the woods who has some type of, or could do the accent well. That makes sense to me. That works for me. That's like that's real. It's like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But to go so far as, how ridiculous do you want to get? Is it Abraham Lincoln, a movie about Abraham Lincoln, starring Morgan Freeman? First off, Morgan Freeman, amazing actor, incredible, so many great movies. He's not Abraham Lincoln. And he's sure as shit not James Bond. James Bond is a white dude who sluts out for every chick that he can get his hands on, and is an amazing agent who has a drinking problem. Okay? So there's got to be some criteria as to what James Bond should be. How he was originally written by Ian Fleming, who wrote the books, the novels. So there's some criteria there. When you start to implement these requirements, though, it takes away from the authenticity of the art. That's what I'm getting at here. But it's a fact now. California's enforcing it. New York's enforcing it. New Jersey's enforcing it. There's tax incentives. There's money. There's obviously money involved. There's prestige involved. If you want to even get close to Oscar nomination consideration, you have to do this. You have to do this. I remember Richard Dreyfuss apparently sounded off on this. If you don't know who Richard Dreyfuss is, old Jewish dude, was in amazing movies starting in the early 70s. I knew him as early as Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's done all kinds of movies that I remember as a kid. Like, I remember Jaws, great movie. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was an incredible movie. Incredible sci-fi movie. And I saw him in other things such as Down and Out Beverly Hills, which is actually kind of cool. That's a cool movie. Stakeout, which was a cop movie. Let It Ride, which was a horse racing movie, which was very lighthearted and enjoyable. I liked that movie. Postcards from the Edge? Postcards from the Edge was written by Carrie Fisher. You don't know who Carrie Fisher is? She's Princess Leia from fucking Star Wars. She wrote that movie. Okay, there's your diversity. What About Bob? He was in What About Bob? He was in Another Stakeout, Lost in Yonkers. He was in a bunch of stuff. He was in The American President. He was in Mr. Holland's Opus, which very good movie. He was in a lot of the stuff. He hasn't done anything lately. He's kind of retired for the most part, semi-retired. But he was, he definitely had said his piece on the new diversity rules from the Oscar. This is 2020. He, quote, said it makes him vomit. So he's receiving, quote, backlash on social media over his comments about the new diversity rules to be eligible for motion picture for the Best Picture award at the Oscars. Quote, they make me vomit, Dreyfuss said on PBS Firing Line. This is an art form. It's also a form of commerce, and it makes money, but it's an art. No one should be telling me as an artist that I have to give in to the latest, most current idea of what morality is. And then we've already talked about starting in 2024, films will be required to meet inclusion standards for the eligibility of Best Picture. They'll have to have a certain percentage of actors or crew from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups. Dreyfuss added, what are we risking? And this is his opinion. So if you can agree or disagree, or maybe you want to fine-tune his argument, and what are we risking? Are we really risking hurting people's feelings? You can't legislate that. You have to let life be life. And this is a man who's been in film industry for 50 fucking years. He's seen it all. He's seen it all. He's worked with everybody. The Jaws actor says that he doesn't think I think there's a minority or a majority in the country that has to be catered like that. Wait, no. Jaws actor said that he doesn't think there's a minority or a majority in the country that has to be catered to like that. Dreyfuss, who won an Oscar in 1977, in the Best Actor category for The Goodbye Girl, I never saw that, praised Laurence Olivier's blackface performance of Othello. Never saw Othello. Blackface is apparently is a thing you can't do anymore. Maybe you shouldn't have done in the first place, but times were different back then. Am I being told that I will never have a chance to play a black man? Dreyfuss said. Continued. He's probably joking when he said that. Remember, Dreyfuss he has a bit of a comical flex to him. All right. He's a smart guy. He's a funny guy. He's not a comedian, but he's played comedic parts. He may have been joking, but on paper, it looks off. But I'll read it as it is. Dreyfuss continued. Is someone else being told that if they're not Jewish, they shouldn't play The Merchant of Venice? Are we crazy? Do we not know that art is art? So he's comparing it with that. Okay. All right. You got me back on board. Hoover followed up with, do you think there's a difference between the question of who is allowed to represent other groups and case of blackface, especially in this country given the history of slavery and sensitivities around black racism? Quote, there shouldn't be because it's patronizing, Dreyfuss said. Because it says we're so fragile that we can't have our feelings hurt. We have to anticipate having our feelings hurt, our children's feelings hurt. We don't know how to stand up and bop the bully in the face. And there's an interview here about that whole that it's part of in there. But ultimately it's like he's stating that these rules are stupid, that it is at the minimum hurting the art in which he dedicated the vast majority of his life to. And he's receiving, quote, backlash or getting some shit online. So this is an actual thing that absolutely is hurting, or is at least, this is absolutely attributing to the casting decisions of newer movies. And it's confirmed. This is an actual thing. It's like, if you're going to make a movie about Greeks, if you're going to make a movie about Russians, if you're going to make a movie about this, that, or the other thing, it's got to have this, that. It's got to have this and that. Every single movie that wants to be considered or funded by these groups or publishing companies, you got to do this. Or no. And since this is a blockbuster movie, The Odyssey, this is supposed to be the big movie of the year, it has to have this or them or that person or this group or that. It has to. From Polygon.com, this 22-year-old war epic, the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, does one thing better than Christopher Nolan's movie The Odyssey ever could. Homer's other Greek epic got a blockbuster movie that's better than you remember. So It's interesting because when you look at the movie Oppenheimer, awful lot of whiteys in that movie. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but ultimately, to correctly portray a historical moment in history, Robert Oppenheimer was a white dude. All the people around him, pretty much white. You know, these if you want to be accurate, you have to, you want to be accurate, you have to do this, that, and the other thing. But no, you can't do that anymore if you're going to make a big movie. Now, interesting. Let me read this part. When Troy premiered in 2004, much of the conversation surrounding the film focused on its scale. Historical epics like 2000's Gladiator were still fresh in everyone's mind. The Lord of the Rings had concluded with Return of the King just a few months prior. Amazing movie, by the way. Troy arrived with all the expected ingredients. Massive armies, political betrayal, blood-soaked duels, an ensemble cast of beautiful movie stars. Most of the discourse at the time reduced the movie to a shallow blockbuster adaptation of Greek mythology headlined by Brad Pitt as the demigod Achilles. Film critic Roger Ebert wrote at the time that the movie sidesteps the existence of the Greek gods, who are prominent in Homer's original epic. Yes, that is true. That movie, the movie Troy, took all of the god stuff out there and made it very much about the human part of the actual human reality of it. Like, the actual war took place. The actual Trojan War, this stuff took place. Like the Trojan War. So if you look up the Trojan War, okay, it was a legendary conflict between the Achaemenid Greeks, the city of Troy in western Italia, that traditionally dated 12th or 13th century BCE. The war was triggered when Trojan prince Paris abducted or eloped with Helen, the wife of Spartan king Menelaus. Led by Menelaus' brother Agamemnon, a massive Greek coalition besieged Troy for 10 years. 10 fucking years. Culminating in the city's fall via the ruse of the Trojan horse. Historically, the war is considered a blend of myth and fact. While the specific events described by Homer in the Odyssey are legendary, archaeologists Schliemann confirmed the existence of the real Bronze Age city of Hesarek in the modern-day Turkey, which shows evidence of destruction around 1180 BCE. Most scholars believe the war reflects a fusion of various Mycenaean expeditions and conflicts over trade routes and political influence in the Eastern... Okay. Key elements of the cause, key elements rather than single historical event centered. So there's a lot of mythology for it. But ultimately, there's a lot of history that say this war happened. Okay. Cause: the abduction of Helen by Paris, driven by the goddess Aphrodite's promise after the judgment of Paris. Major figures: Greek heroes included Achilles, Odysseus, and Agamemnon. Trojan heroes included Hector and Priam. Outcome: the Greeks won by hiding soldiers inside of a large wooden horse, which is the Trojans brought into their city, allowing the Greeks to sack Troy. Legacy: the war serves as a foundational narrative for Greeks' epic poetry and Roman literature. So, the Trojan War, legendary. It actually... This was the thing that was, because it was a long time ago, there's a lot of myth around it. It's just like 300. The movie 300, there was a lot of myth. And myth, once you have mythology, like Gladiator the movie in general, is not historically accurate. It's a retelling. But it's a retelling of things that actually were going on in the Roman Empire around that time. And that's the thing about Troy. Let me see here. Right. So they took all the mysticism out of the movie Troy. They kept it grounded in things that would make sense at the time to the moviegoer, to the person who was viewing the movie. It's like, oh yeah, there's this chick and this guy who wanted to bang this chick, so he took this chick back to this place, but even though she was dating this guy got mad, so he brought over here, and they wanted to, fight it out, and blah, 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 and it didn't work out, so they decided to have a war. And da-da-da-da-da, and there you go. So there was no gods involved or anything like that. It was pretty straight to the point realism. The movie was embedded in realism. with a dash of mythology, like Achilles getting shot in the heel with the arrow by Orlando Bloom's character, resulting in Achilles' death. Like little things here and there. Now, the gods are referenced many times in the movie, but they're also challenged by Eric Bana's character, Hector, the protector of Troy. It is challenged by his character in the movie many times, saying that just because you say that the gods are angry or the gods predict this, that doesn't mean it's true. In reality, the men protecting the walls of Troy are responsible for whether or not Troy lives or dies. And it was because of the elders of Troy believing in what supposedly the gods are interpreting or saying, that led to the downfall of Troy. Very interesting. Very, very interesting that the realism of that part, insulting the gods. And that was also brought in, that's also kind of noted in the movie 300, which was definitely more mythological in some aspects as far as like some of the scenes that you see in there, but ultimately embedded in realism as far as like the fights. Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of like interesting characters in the movie, but when it was talking about the Carnia, Sparta was very religious, and ultimately in some ways corrupt and eccentric, but you do not wage war during the time of the Carnia, the festival. It is disrespectful to the gods, the oracles. And that also led to the downfall of the 300, the Spartans, because they were not able to assemble the army that was needed in order to defeat the Persians at that time. Even though the Greeks eventually did defeat the Persians. But it was through the sacking of Athens. Athens got burned to the fucking ground. After that, did the Greeks finally unite and take out the Persians. So the realism of Troy is what made that movie good. There was no underrepresentation or anything. That didn't exist in 2000 cinema. It just didn't. It was, make it epic, give me big stars, and make it real, and make it realistic, and give credibility to the way it was originally written, and give credibility to the actual facts in history to an extent, to sell it to the producers who are going to give you that $200 million production budget, and to the audience in whom you respect as a moviegoer to earn their ticket purchase. And it seems like today that is not the case. Now, don't get me wrong. Movies of the 90s and 2000s also had their faults. Like, for example, Terminator Salvation, promising movie, but didn't deliver because bad director, pressure from the production companies and the producers and all that stuff. And it just led to the downfall of the movie in general, aka a clunky movie. But you're introducing these guidelines from the Motion Picture Academy from the Academy Awards Association. And that is leading to the downfall of a lot of modern cinema. Now, the good news is you have a lot of companies out there like A24, Daily Wire, and other independent production companies, publishing companies out there that are like, we don't fucking care about that stuff. We don't. Directors like Quentin Tarantino, they don't give a shit about that stuff. That just want to make movies their way. And don't care about this diversity and inclusion garbage that has been mandated by the Oscars in order to be considered for that big prize. So this is ultimately what has led to what you're seeing as far as backlash for the Odyssey. If Lupita Nyong'o wasn't cast as Helena Troy, I think ultimately the hubbub around the Odyssey would have died down, because we would have found out by now that Elliot Page was probably not playing Achilles. Now, first of all, Achilles was portrayed as Brad Pitt, a shredded, jacked, dude who definitely who looked Greek to an extent, at least in a shiny Hollywood way. But ultimately, it was like Achilles is supposed to be portrayed as from the mythology, the facts, ultimately as a historical person. He is notarized as a masculine warrior. Elliot Page is not that. Elliot Page is a 120-pound weakling. Outspoken. That is not Achilles. It just isn't. When you compare, who is more likely to be credible as the character Achilles? Elliot Page or Brad Pitt? The answer is Brad Pitt. I'm sorry, it's Brad Pitt. Who is more likely to be a better example of Helen of Troy? Helen of Troy as the most beautiful woman at that time with amazing golden hair. Who is more likely to have portrayed her? Now, if you're going to say Sydney Sweeney, no. I'm sorry. Sydney Sweeney, very beautiful, very Americana. But that is not, in my opinion, not the person you would pick for Helen of Troy. What about Zendaya? Zendaya's in this movie. Zendaya, who plays MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming. She's in Euphoria with Sydney Sweeney. She's also in the hell is it? I'm sorry, I can't remember. But ultimately, Zendaya, I mean, I don't know, could you make her with golden hair as the myth originally was written by Homer? I guess you could. Oh no, she's in Dune. I'm sorry, she was in Dune. She's in the trilogy Dune. So there's that to consider. I mean, she's obviously not white, but I mean, who gives a fuck? She's a great actress. She is. She just is. I like her. When I see her in a movie, I go, cool. I'm cool with Zendaya. She's also married to Tom Holland, which I think is awesome. Good for Tom Holland. He's a handsome fella. Seems to have his head on his shoulders. But yeah, I don't. When I see like if you say okay, the Odyssey, starring Matt Damon. Okay, Matt Damon and Brad Pitt are on the same wavelength here. That's the same A-list ranking there. So there's that. You got John Bernthal, who plays the Punisher. He's in there. But then you got Helen of Troy, played by Lupita Nyong'o. It's like, wait, hold on a second here. Are we not staying accurate? And my goal here is not to shit on Lupita Nyong'o. It just isn't. It's just not. That is not my intent here. My goal here is to give you the facts of the matter. Like, give you the actual facts of what is being demanded by the Oscars, by the publishing companies, by these states that offer these tax incentives or penalties when you film there. And the reality of selling it to the audience. I'm sorry. If it was true that Elliot Page was playing Achilles, you can't sell me on that because it's not reality. Brad Pitt is 160, 170 pounds, shredded. Now, you've seen pictures of Elliot Page with abs, but there's no effort there. That is all transitioning stuff and surgery. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. There's 1,000 actors out there that could absolutely play Achilles in a modern day age. That's way above Elliot Page. I'm sorry. It's just there's no masculinity there. Give me Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson he fucking played Batman. And he was also in Tenet. If you say that Robert Pattinson's playing is playing Achilles, you're like, all right, sold. But I don't think that Elliot Page is playing Achilles. If it does, if she is, it's like, okay, hold on. That's why are we doing this? At this point, it's like, why even fucking bother? Why bother? This isn't good. Ultimately, because of my love and appreciation for Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker. I understand some of his movies are not good. But I also understand that some of his movies are epic and fantastic and have shaped my loving for cinema and art in general. But it upsets me that this opinion of mine is looked down upon and is scolded. And it hurts, at the end of the day, it hurts the bottom line. And you make a $250 production movie, and then you add on marketing. $300 million. Let's say you got $300 million in a film. And because you are forced to put these diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion things, like, oh, we have to pay this actress this much money because the Academy says so. You have to cast this person in 30% of the roles because the Academy says so. And then all of a sudden the fucking movie bombs. It's like, we can't make movies like that anymore. We can't make movies like this. We don't have a choice. We can't make these historical movies like this because the Academy says fucking Hitler has to be black. Goebbels has to be black. I'm sorry, if you make a movie about World War II, the Holocaust, Nazi Germany, you're not going to find much black there. You're not. You're making a movie about World War II? You got Jews, Germans, Italians, and Americans, and Russians. A lot of white. A lot of fucking Italian, a lot of arm hair, a lot of Jews, a lot of minority hating. You can't, if you want to be considered by the Academy now, you can't do that. You can't make a movie, you can't make the art authentic anymore. And that means it's no longer art. That means there's a message. There's virtue signaling. There's something in there. It's a bad seed that ruins the overall movie experience because you had to do this, that, and the other thing. And because you're so focused on appeasing to the Academy's demands, you're not focused on making the greatest story ever told. You're not focused on fixing the plot holes or the reshoots or making sure the actors are happy and that you're not focused on that anymore. Because you have to deal with all this other stuff that the Academy and the production companies and the states that you film in are mandating. You're ultimately ruining the quality of the experience of viewing it. And what sucks is that this is going to, as long as this still is in effect, it's going to ruin all the big movies that you see. You're gonna see that shit. In all of the miniseries that you see, whether it's the new Game of Thrones miniseries or what have you, it's like, gotta have a black person in there. Gotta have a trans person in there. Gotta have an LGBTQ plus in there. And it's not because the movie, that's part of the movie, it's because it's demanded. It's just demanded. It's fucking stupid. Make a movie for what it is. It's an art form. And if it requires certain ethnicities, like the movie itself, not the Academy, not the state tax incentives, not the production company's requirements. If the movie requires a certain person to make the movie seem more authentic, then you go and get that person. Muhammad Ali was not Puerto Rican. So go and get a Will Smith type. Don't wash out the history or the mythology of it simply because of the demands and the requirements the guidelines that are being brought forth. But unfortunately, I'm just one person. I'm not going to make a difference. The only thing I can do is not bother to pay to see the movie. And I won't. I don't pay to see movies anymore. I don't bother. You will not get my money to see this movie. I will bring attention to it, as I'm doing right here. But this isn't just about the Odyssey. This is about every other movie that you've seen out there and that you're going to see going forward that is of some weight. Any movie worth its weight is going to have to be required to follow these guidelines. And that is unfortunately, in 9 out of the 10 outcomes, it's going to hurt that movie. And at the end of the day, the paying viewer is the one who gets screwed. I've joked about it before, and I will continue to be like, yeah, okay. But look, the outrage is, or the upsettedness, whatever it is real, because the people are complaining about something that it's not authentic. It's not authentic to the history, or the mythology. It doesn't jive. Am I going to bother to see the movie to see how bullshit it really is? No. Will I watch it? Maybe eventually I'll get around to it. But I don't want to watch something just so I can get upset. Like, I don't want to watch, no disrespect to 12 Years a Slave. I'm sure it's a good movie. I don't want to watch it because I don't want to be bummed out. Like, do you think I just sit down with some popcorn and watch Schindler's List just because, I need to re-up that? No, I'm sorry. I just can't. I watched Schindler's List once or twice. And you know what? That was enough. Why? Why was it enough? Because it was super accurate in terms of how it made you feel. And that's what that movie was supposed to do. It did its job. But if Schindler's List had these requirements, it would not be authentic. It would take you out of the movie experience. That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. I'll be somewhat drunkenly. I'm trying to explain to you that if Schindler's List was made in 2025, and Schindler's List is a Academy Award type movie, if it had to follow these requirements, A, the requirements would ruin the authenticity of the movie, or B, it wouldn't get made at all because it wouldn't receive the proper funding in order to actually produce the movie, because you had to follow these guidelines. You would never get Oscar Schindler. You would never get Schindler's List. That's what I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying to portray to you. There's so many other people out there that could ultimately explain this to you better, but I wanted to at least give it to you straight that the reason you're seeing these people cast in these roles is because it is 100% due to the Academy Awards mandating these clauses. You can deny it all you want, but the fact is that the Academy Awards, those guidelines exist. It's true. So if you see next year, if you see the Odyssey on the Academy Award nomination for Best Picture, if you see, I'm going to repeat this one more time so that there's no misconception here. If you see the Odyssey on the ballot for Best Motion Picture at the Oscars, aka the Academy Awards, it is because they followed these guidelines for underrepresented groups, such as Elliot Page for being transgender, Lupita Nyong'o for being cast as Helena Troy, who, if you saw Lupita Nyong'o, you would know at first glance she ain't white, but most importantly, she ain't Greek. But just remember this. I'm going to leave you with one more thing. When it comes to making these big budget movies, you're taking a huge risk. Because there was a movie that just came out, for whatever reason, that recent box office blunder. One movie just came out recently. There we go. When you start playing these diversity inclusion games, according to the Academy of Motion Picture, or they call it woke, the term go woke, go broke. Desert Warrior, 2026, starring a good actor, Anthony Mackie. $150 million production budget. $150 million. It grossed a grand total of $695,564. Why? Don't know. Maybe it was a good movie. Maybe it was a bad movie. I don't know. But you understand that when you start appealing to these guidelines because you want to be seen as progressive and following the rules of the motion picture. Remember, at the end of the day, that movie still has to make money. And the only way it's going to make money is if you convince the plebs, the brokies, the wagies, the people who go and see movies, whether it's through Netflix or through the cinema. You have to convince these people that the movie is authentic enough that it's worth paying $15, $20, $30 to go see. And the only way this will change is if the movie The Odyssey loses money. So, The Odyssey budget box office. The Odyssey production budget and marketing cost. This movie, its reported production budget is $250 million. I'll finish with this. It does not provide specific figures for marketing cost. Industry analysts suggest that with a $250 million production budget, the film would typically need to earn approximately, globally, because globally this movie will probably do it, earn approximately $625 million to globally reach profitability. Imagine that. Movie has to make... Now, will it do it? Maybe. Maybe. Now, it could only earn maybe $80 to $100 million locally in the United States. Most of its reach, most of its money will probably come from overseas. If this movie makes $600 million, $625 million, they will keep making movies like this with these cast inclusion things. They just will. The only way you will see a turnaround in this is if it makes that Desert Warrior type number, where it just bombs hard, bad, even locally. Because then it will point to the elephant in the room. Like, for example, let's say, it's going to get distributed globally. But if the movie gets really bad reviews, and then all of a sudden it hits US theaters and nobody goes to see it, that's when you'll know that this whole thing is in trouble. Because at the end of the day, you can be as woke as you want. If the production companies are not willing to give you $200 million to make that movie, things will change. Because at the end of the day, it is all about dollars. It's not about the Academy Awards. It's all about the Benjamins. And this is only going to change if movies like this are jeopardized when they reach theaters. So, those are the facts. You come up with your own thoughts. But ultimately, the reason that these people were cast is because they have to follow these guidelines in order to be considered for the Motion Picture Association for Best Picture by the Oscars. That's how it is. I'm sorry. If Lupita Nyong'o and Elliot Page were not in this movie, it's according to the rules. I'm sorry. We're looking at a row of white people: Anne Hathaway, John Bernthal, Robert Pattinson, Tom Holland, Matt fucking Damon. They're all whiteys. The only reason, and then you look at Elliot Page. She's white, but trans. Lupita Nyong'o, black. In order to be considered for Best Picture, the obvious, you're pointing at those two. You're pointing at those two. If they weren't in there, if those two actors were not in this movie, those rules brought by the Oscars would come into force. And technically, they would be out of the running for Best Picture. Prove me wrong. You can find me on Instagram at @positive_sarcasm. You can hit me up through my website, positivesarcasm.com. Go to the contact page. You can email me directly, positivesarcasm@outlook.com. You can comment any way you see fit. You can comment on my inebriated hour and 40-something minute podcast today. You can say whatever you want on this platform. Maybe I'll respond, maybe I won't. But I'm just telling you like it is. You can also, if you want to listen to this podcast, you can listen to the audio version on my website, downloadable and streamable directly from my website. You can also get it up on Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, downloadable from Substack as well from my website. Anywhere podcasts are available. If you want to watch this podcast, check out YouTube and Rumble, Positive Sarcasm Podcast. And please, feel free to like, subscribe, and share. But most importantly, donate. This is a free podcast, but if you want to donate, just simply go to positivesarcasm.com/donate. And you can donate almost nothing, like as little as $1. If you want to contribute to this podcast and fund the spare parts that I bring into play, feel free. Offer it up. positivesarcasm.com/donate. Any amount is appreciated. I'm trying to be more consistent here. I'm trying to do a better job with the production value, bring you more facts, bring you more fluidity, hit some topics, not for shock value, but to actually provide some context, some actual reality to the things that you're seeing out there. All right. There are some things that upset me. I love art in all forms. I love musical art. I love art. I like comedy art. I like martial arts. I like movie art. I like the idea of art being creative. I love that. I really, really do. But I don't want to be beaten over the head like, in order to do this, you have to do that. I'm not about that. I like authentic. Okay? And at the end of the day, if somebody who is not that, but actually makes it seem more authentic can do that, cool. I don't care if a Mexican is making me Chinese food. I don't care. Just make it seem real and you'll have my attention. But if you're pushing a narrative or you're representing something that I know as a fact is out of the realm of even the remote possibility of authenticity, you are taking me out of the story and you won't get me back. And that also goes for a lot of other people who may have been ticket buyers. And that's a risk you'll have to take, not me. Thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing. And I'll talk to you all next week. Yeah, there you go. I'll talk to you all next week. Recorded here from the Spare Parts Studio alongside New Hampshire's beautiful seacoast. For entertainment purposes only, this has been a Positive Sarcasm presentation.